you ready for this? All right. The statements issued by hosts, co-hosts, guests, and anyone else appearing on the show do not reflect the stance of the College of New Jersey or the NJDOE OSE. Please use your professional judgment when implementing strategies and resources within your practice. All right. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the TCNJ AT Talks podcast. This is the podcast that's affiliated with the AT Center at TCNJ. We're here to inform, to educate, to empower listeners with assistive technology. And today we're going to answer some questions from our mailbag. I'm going to get to know Vanessa a little more. We're going to talk about AT considerations and how we figure out what assistive technology we're going to use for a student. And then we're going to play a little game. So AT Challenge Feature Match Mania. First off, we're going to start with our mailbag. We got a question from Rachel. She says, I'm a fifth grade teacher and I have a student who consistently struggles with reading comprehension. Despite trying various traditional interventions, I suspect assistive technology could help, but I'm not sure where to start. What are some initial low-cost AT tools or strategies I could try in my classroom to support this student's reading? So I don't know about you, Vanessa, but something I usually jump right to is text-to-speech. And text-to-speech is available pretty much everywhere now. You can get it on a Windows laptop. You can get it on a Chromebook. It's built into iOS and macOS, so the iPads, iPhones, and things like that. Usually on a Windows computer, it's known as Read Aloud. So you might have seen that in Microsoft Word or Outlook or something like that. Chrome laptops, there's some different ways to get to it, but it's known as Select to Speak. And then on Mac and iOS, it's under the accessibility section. So this is something you actually have to turn on, and it's called spoken content, where you can do things like speak selection, speak screen. It highlights and it reads as it reads, so you can follow along on the page. And then you can even slow down, change the speaking rate, change the voice as well. Mm-hmm. So do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good first step. I mean, also in terms of Microsoft, there's the immersive reader too. Very similarly, they work very similarly, but they're called, different things. But it's a nice first step because, as you mentioned, it is built in. Mm-hmm. So you can give it a try and see. Not every student is an auditory learner. True. Really thinking about that as the best way that they receive information and comprehend information. But I'm a big fan of all the built-in tools and all the different platforms.
Yeah, I've always, even when I was a teacher, I used to say, if it's free, it's for me.
Oh, agree.
Right?
100%. Oh, that rhymes too. Look at that. Absolutely.
So then you get into paid for or freemium version apps. One that I've seen over and over not only works well with students, but also a lot of times districts already have it, is something called Read and Write. Mm-hmm. And so this is a Chrome add-on. It's not available. Technically, it is available on the iPad, iOS, but it's just as a keyboard. This really where it shines is on Chrome laptops, because it's available as a Chrome extension, or Windows laptops, also available as a Chrome extension, or even a standalone app. Mm-hmm. And if you're a teacher, you actually can get it for free, and you just have to fill out a form and sign up, and there'll be a link. I'll put a link in our show notes so that you can check this out. You can get it for free. Students, you can get a 30-day free trial for them to test it out with them. And also, a lot of times what I've been finding is that districts have licenses or seats for this, and a lot of times teachers don't even know about it. So that's why I'm kind of talking about it today, because I've walked into districts, done an evaluation, pulled up the student's laptop, opened up Chrome, looked in the extensions, and found Read and Write. Mm-hmm. And what's one of the cool things I've been finding lately is that they now have these AI voices. So inflections sound like real humans. And like when there's an exclamation point at the end of a sentence, the voice will rise as it speaks through that sentence.
Yeah, it changes the pitch.
Yeah.
It is a really, it's a tool that I would call a literacy support, because it does do reading and writing.
Yes.
And there's a lot of different features to it. So it's nice to have something that is like all inclusive. And then, as we're going to talk about the feature matching, right, you kind of pick the features that work best for the student.
Right.
They're, they're available. They're there.
And that's what's cool about any of these tools like Read and Write is the feature matching, you can choose the options that you want to show up in the toolbar, so that way the student doesn't get disorganized or not sure what they're doing with the different buttons.
Lost in all the buttons.
Yes, because if you open up Read and Write and you load the whole thing, there's probably about 20 buttons, 15, 20 buttons. And they all can be used for different reasons. But a lot of times, most students don't need them, Cool. The next mailbag comes from Monica. And she says, I'm a parent of a child with ADHD who is having trouble with organization and time management for homework. We've tried calendars and planners, but they don't seem to stick. Are there any specific assistive technology apps or digital tools that teachers or other parents have found particularly effective in helping students with ADHD develop better executive function skills? So one I jump right to, because a lot of districts already have it and a lot of people already have just a Gmail, is Google Calendars. Google Calendar and Google Keep. Google Calendar has not only where you can put in appointments and things like that, but it also has a tasks function where I can put a specific task in and I can set it for a date or a location or something along those lines, and then I can check it off once I'm done with it, right? And that's also available in Microsoft Outlook Calendar too if you use Microsoft. The other one I like, and this is only iOS, macOS, is the Reminders app. And then I also will use that sometimes in conjunction with the Notes app. But the Reminders app is super customizable. And this is one where you can choose things like, when I'm text messaging someone, remind me about this. When I get to a location or leave a location, remind me about this. On a certain date, a certain time, remind me about this. So like a student's leaving school, it might remind them, did you grab your notebook? Did you grab your water bottle? Did you grab your laptop, right? Or did you write down your homework for tonight? And that's where they can check it off. And then they can even add their own reminders in there, right? Is there anything else that you can think of that's free that might help with executive functioning?
Well, I was going to say, certainly I'm a big fan of any kind of list and reminder, right? So in terms of thinking about really any of these tools, if a student or person, right, is struggling in this area, thinking about a tool that's going to help them. So it's not maybe necessarily, it could, improve their skill also. But if we know that there's a deficit and they're struggling, we're giving them something to bridge the gap. Right. So giving them a tool that is going to help them in all these areas and is going to be that automatic reminder. And the location, as you mentioned, I feel like that's an underused piece of this, where when you leave a location, similarly, I have 3 children, one in high school, one in middle school, and there is a lot to remember.
Right.
And so when they leave, to be able to say, did you scan your locker for your jacket, the sneakers that you're supposed to bring home, things like that. So I think that location is an underutilized feature that really could be very helpful.
Oh, yeah. And, you reminded me, with my son for a while, he was having some trouble when he would get home from school, like with what he should be doing, like, get his lunchbox out, put that in the dishwasher.
Sure.
He has a task to take the recycling out. So I made a remind for him. When he got home, he had reminders for him. He has these ones he had to check off. He would go on his iPad real quick, check off, he'd put his lunchbox away, check off, did we have to sign anything? Check off, he'd take the recycling out, or did the recycling to go to the curb? All those kinds of things. And now he doesn't need it anymore, so he has it memorized. So when he comes home, I say, did you do your checklist? And he goes, oh, let me go do it. He doesn't check it off anymore. But he did it for such a long time that he knew how to check it off. And I could check it myself because we had it shared. So I could see, like, all right, what did he do? And my son's 9 years old. And I'd be like, hey, I don't think do we have to sign anything? He's like, oh, let me go check. And he'd go to his folder, pull stuff out. And all the time he'd pull something out. Oh, you got something to sign. Like it was almost always something that I had to sign. But
sure. No, of course. And the best part about this, again, it's for anybody.
Right.
So regardless of if you have a disability or don't have a disability, I think everybody could benefit from reminders of things from time to time.
Right.
So it is great to, again, utilize what it is built in.
Well, I use it all the time.
Absolutely.
When I have things to do, or like evaluations to get done, even just normal everyday life stuff. I put stuff in there, and it's nice to go, oh, I got home. Oh, did I do that? Oh, check it off. And there's also, so then we get into the paid for apps, and there are some freemium versions of these as well. One that comes to mind is ChoiceWorks, and that's one specifically made for kids with ADHD and autism. And it's similar to the Remind app, but it's self-contained, and there's different ways you can create a list or a task or things to get done. There's timers in there. There's when I get done with something, I can choose something to do, and I can check stuff off, and I can slide things from left to right. And then the other one is First Then Visual. That's another one. You can make it individual, so you have to do this one task, then you move on to the next task, then you move on to the next task. Or I can have all the task lists right in front of me, and I can also have a timer with those tasks too. So I know that, like, am I staying time on task? If I have 10 minutes in the morning when I first get to school, I have to get everything out of my backpack and put it in there and get ready and all that kind of stuff. Did I get it done in those 10 minutes? And when those 10 minutes are up, now I have to move on to my next task, right? But those are the two that come to mind. Do you have any paid for apps or any ideas?
I was going to say, not off the cuff, not anything. But again, as always, right, of course, this is a general question, by someone, which of course we really appreciate getting these questions. But it's all going to depend on what works best for you, for your child, for their lifestyle, what school they're in. Of course, there's lots of variability, as always. But these are just some good general guidelines.
Good. All right. So now we're going to learn a little more about Vanessa. So I'm just going to ask her some regular questions about her development into the assistive technology field and where she came from. And then we're going to have some rapid fire. The first set of rapid fire is going to be kind of fun. And the second rapid fire is going to be more about assistive technology. So we'll see. And she has not seen any of these questions yet. Well, at least she has not seen the rapid fire questions yet. So these are going to be off the cuff.
She is not nervous. So go on.
So, Vanessa, with your extensive background, with your master's in education, your ATP certification, what initially drew you to education and assistive technology?
So I think back to my student teaching. One of my first experiences, I was working with a teacher in a public school. She was working with students who were transition age, so roughly 16 or 18, I think at the time, to about 21. Of course, it changes every year depending on who's in the classroom. But she was really, I think, very ahead of her time in terms of community-based instruction. We would only spend, a little bit of time in the morning at school, and then we were out in the community. She made all kinds of relationships with people and had the students out doing all kinds of different things. When we were somewhere, she would stop and do a math lesson, and in the equivalent of a ShopRite, kind of thing. But what I noticed, being kind of a techie person, was that she did everything very, very low tech and did it well, low tech. But then there would be gaps, things like a reminders or things like digital lists, right? So if we had a paper list and now it's lost or left on the bus right? Typically then, at the time they would have, maybe it was even iPods at the time, but, some type of device with them. And I said, what if we put that list on the device or right? So thinking about infusing technology into what we were already doing.
Right.
And around the building and all the different kinds of tasks. And I was very fortunate to be working with someone who was open to those suggestions. Right. And that's really where I kind of started thinking about this, to say, well, what is this a field, right? Is this a path to work? How could this, kind of work in terms of that? And I just really loved it. You talked a little bit about this on the last podcast. You kind of fall in love with the possibility and, thinking about that. So that was sort of my first kind of thought about, assistive technology. And then it really just grew from there. And then I was fortunate to be able to work primarily as an assistive technology specialist, right? So kind of going out of the classroom and working more in that capacity, looking at evaluations, about training, and what has been cool over this amount of time is to see, of course, all the great changes that have happened in the field. I mean, just technology, period. Forget about, of course, also in assistive technology, but the thought of thinking about, ed tech and assistive technology and the blending of those two things, all the built-in stuff that we've been talking about, different mindset shifts over time. And it's been interesting to kind of reflect on that, like those very early days of working with students and thinking about what we thought might have been best practice at the time, but, just learning over time all the, all the other possibilities. So yes, that's a little bit about the start and kind of planting that seed.
That's really cool. All right. Next question. As the project director of the AT Center at TCNJ, you are at the forefront of empowering individuals with these technologies. What specific aspects of this role excite you the most, and what do you hope to achieve in long term for the center?
Yeah. So I think first, for the professionals that we are working with, we really want to give them the tools, give them the confidence. I think that teachers are pulled in so many directions. This is not news, right? This is over time. And I think that they absolutely, of course, want to do what is best for their students, help them in any way that they can. But our role is to give them that extra oomph, maybe, right? To kind of be a sounding board, to be able to collaborate. Because the professionals that we're working with, they're our primary audience, right? So the teachers, special ed teachers, general ed teachers, the administrators at the school, the paraprofessionals, and then of course the families as well. So I see our role as definitely awareness building, empowerment, capacity building, collaboration, and really thinking about this not just for now, but for the life of the student, we said this before, I've said this in many presentations, students grow up, they become adults. And so we want to make sure that we are doing the best that we can for them to set them up for success, and thinking about the professionals, too, helping them be as successful as possible in this parameter.
Yeah, that's good. Cool. So for other professionals looking to make a significant impact in this assistive technology field, what advice would you offer based on your own career path and dedication to empowering individuals? Or what advice would you give someone just who's looking to break into this field, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say there's so much learning, right? I mean, and I think it can feel overwhelming, right? When you are kind of starting, because there is so much. But there's a lot of really great resources. I mean, one just off the top is ATIA, for assistive technology. Their website is ATIA. I think it's .org. No, we'll make sure we get it.
I'll put it in the show notes.
We'll get it right. But they have a huge knowledge center. Some of the webinars, of course, are paid. Some of them are free. But I mean, on all kinds of topics, and they're organized in terms of strands. So if you have a focus with working with students with visual impairments, there's a specific set of webinars for that. They have experts from all over the world, and so it's really a very rich and high quality repository of information regarding assistive technology, accessibility. I mean, all different kinds of stuff. So I would certainly say to look at a resource like that. They have an annual conference, and there's a few other organizations that have annual conferences as well. But I think the other thing is to try. Right. I always like to tell people, you really, it's hard to break something for real, right? There's always some way to untangle, typically, something. And so play around, take a look, sign up for a software, try something for free for 7 days, 14 days. It's just going to only empower and expand your learning. And I think that's the way to start, because it can feel very overwhelming, but find an area of interest and see what's out there, and kind of go from there.
Well, and that's a great point. There's so many times when someone's given me a new piece of technology, software, program, app, where I've never broken it, but I've gone in and found my own way to get from point A to point B, and it might not be the same way that everyone else does. And sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower, sometimes it's more convoluted. Sometimes it's less convoluted. But yeah, I've never broken anything, right? I've dropped things and broken them.
Oh, that's a different situation altogether. I also have been guilty. But right, but not for going into settings and kind of playing around.
No, there's always a reset button. There's always a going back. I love that. I think that's a great point. Go in and try to break it. And I actually do that sometimes. I try to break the functionality so I can figure it out. So, because if I do break it, then I know how to fix it too. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to have 2 rounds of rapid fire questions. The first round is going to be a little more fun. The second round will be more about assistive tech or assistive AT related. So you ready?
All right. I'm ready.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
All right. Beach or mountain vacation?
Beach.
Sweet or savory snacks?
Savory.
Me too. Dogs or cats?
Cats.
I'm dogs.
Oh, my 2 little kittens.
Go on. What are their names?
They are Tux for tuxedo because he's a black with a little white.
Yep.
And then Zeus because he's a scaredy cat.
Okay. I don't get the Zeus, but okay.
Because Zeus, the Greek god from mythology.
Yes.
And he's the complete antithesis.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Favorite season?
Probably the fall.
Okay. Why is fall your favorite season?
Well, first of all, it's my birthday in the fall,
Okay.
so there's
Yep.
that.
There you go.
But I like coming out of the summer and kind of having that soft, sometimes softer start to winter, because winter is my least favorite.
Okay.
So.
Podcast or music for your commute?
For the commute, podcast.
Okay. Do you have a favorite podcast?
Can I give you 3?
Yeah, give all of them. Let's hear them.
So I am a little bit of a podcast junkie, and they change, you know,
Yeah.
all the time, depending, of course, on various things going on. So one that I really love is How I Built This by with Guy Raz. So this is all about, you know, founders who have started various types of companies, and I just find it so interesting. I love to hear people's stories, so I'm also kind of a memoir kind of person, but also in terms of like how things work, right? And kind of understanding that. So that's one. I like Unbiased Politics by Jordan Berman. Again, just learn a lot. I like the Ezra Klein show sort of for that too. And then just my fun, I guess, but I like the Andrew Huberman podcast because he talks about just a breadth of different things.
Yes.
And I just like to learn about that kind of stuff.
Yes. I've listened to How I Built This before, and I've listened to Andrew Huberman. Those are both good podcasts. I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Call or text?
A call person.
Okay. I'm in
I was
between.
born in the 1900s, so I'm a call person.
I'm in between. It depends on. I do go to call first, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, text.
Oh, for a quick, sure.
No,
Absolutely.
but yes, I agree. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, can I give you 2?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go.
Okay, so the first one is for myself, and then maybe one is for other people. I don't know, but and for myself too. But the first one is I would love to have the abilities of a fish, right? As a human, but being in the water. I love the water. I said beach, you know, of course, was my favorite. Lots of good connections to the water. So I would love to have those capabilities.
So
like,
Aquawoman.
yeah, like Aquawoman. Yes,
Yes.
I'm on board with that.
All right.
The second superpower, and I want this for myself, and I try to be this way, but to be curious as often as possible, right?
Cool.
If I could give it to other people, right? Like, so this is my superpower to say to the people around me, be curious. Because I feel like when we stop being curious, we kind of get into ruts where could be more fear-based, like we're not expanding our knowledge. So that would be a cool superpower to make everybody
a little more curious.
Curious.
I like it. All right. So that's it for personal or individual questions. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about technology and AT.
Okay.
So, question 1. One tool you can't live without for productivity.
Oh, well, we talked about this a little already, but reminders, list/reminder. Like it must go together. There must be some reminder to say, did you do this thing? For productivity, there's no way without it, for sure.
Favorite low-tech AT solution?
Ooh, favorite. Maybe a slant board, but also with a good clip. Like not one of these clips that doesn't really hold things. That's not going to work. So maybe slant board / clip or like a good mount.
Yes, I agree.
Because you could use it in a million different ways.
Yes. Biggest myth about assistive technology, about AT?
Oh, that it's so expensive. That is the myth for sure. It doesn't have to be. It can, but it doesn't have to be.
Right. One thing every educator should know about AT.
One thing every educator should know. I guess that it's not as hard as you think. Maybe.
Yes.
We
yes.
could say that. It really is. It's not as hard as you think. At least to start.
I agree. No, I totally agree. Most exciting recent AT innovation you've seen?
Oh, I mean, it has to be the AI infusion of things. And again, as we said, not without some ethical concerns, things to be aware of for sure, process, but yeah, I mean, the game changer, it's amazing.
Yes, I agree.
Very exciting.
Good. Paper or digital when it comes to organization for students with ADHD?
Ooh. Again, this is a hard one. It could kind of go either way.
Yes.
But I would tend, again, being a mom of 3 people, 2 of which have phones, they always have them. And the paper is lost, eaten, it's in the trash. We don't know what happened to it. It's disappeared into thin air.
It's gone.
So digital,
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
More so.
Good.
Could go either way.
Key to successful AT in the classroom. Implementation is what I mean. But
Key to successful implementation, which is going to sound so basic, but it's know the kids, right? Know the students, know what makes them tick, what makes them excited. I feel like you have to start there at the foundation.
Cool. And the last one. One word to describe the future of assistive technology in education.
Ooh, one word to describe the future.
Not 2, 1.
Oh. You knew that. Can I have 7? Because I like to bend the rules sometimes. I think, this is a hard one. I guess, I mean, I would love to say inclusion. I think, of course, right, we are moving toward that. And yeah, that's what I would like to see. Right? You said what I would like to see.
Yes.
That's what I would like to see.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great segue. I think inclusion, everyone can benefit from assistive technology whether or not you think they can, right? Like there's so many times where like I see something I'm using for one student that might have a disability. It doesn't mean the student right next to them can't also use that technology
for
as
sure.
well.
There's universal tools,
right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I like that inclusion. Cool. All right. So that's gonna bring us into the meat. Well, that was the meat of our podcast, but that's gonna bring us into a little more. We're gonna talk about AT considerations, right? So let's just talk about what does AT consideration mean?
So AT consideration, it is part of the IEP. So when we're talking about the definition, right, of assistive technology, that it's something, any device, right, that is improving the functionality for a person. Obviously, again, we're, primarily talking students, but to bridge the gap, right? So it's not necessarily maybe teaching skills, but it's, enabling the student, right, to do something. So it's a both and.
Right.
So in the AT consideration process, it is kind of what it says, right? It is considering, is assistive technology, could it be beneficial to this student? The thing that IDEA, so IDEA is the law, right? So it's got that piece that it says that assistive technology must be considered for a student. And
in the IEP, there's an actual question that says,
correct. Yep.
Was assistive technology considered for the student? Yes or no?
Right.
Right. And what assistive technology does the student have, or what are they using?
Correct. Yes. All of that absolutely accurate. Right. So sometimes, it could be easy to just kind of check that box and say, oh yeah, we considered it. But what I would challenge and what I have learned about, and we're going to talk about, some of these resources, but that it is a process. It's not one singular question. It's not a yes or no, typically, or at least I should say. It could be a yes or no, but it doesn't stop there.
Right.
So maybe that is the first question, right, in this process. So when we're talking about assistive technology, right? Well, you mentioned this before, right? There's these universal tools, right? The built-in stuff, things that everybody can benefit from. So you've got these tools, they could range low tech, mid tech, high tech, or light tech, mid tech, high tech, but that there's students who need something more specialized, right? They need something that's going to delve a little bit deeper. And so that is where you have the AT, it comes in. And this is all part of also another acronym, FAPE.
Yes.
Free, appropriate, public education.
Which everyone receives, right? Everyone gets a free, appropriate, or they can receive a free, appropriate.
They can. And so the question is, that's what the AT is considering. To achieve that, right, to achieve FAPE, is assistive technology, could it be, should it be, will it be, beneficial to the student to provide that, right? The FAPE, and of course in the least restrictive environment for the student, whatever that looks like for that student, their needs, etc. So we're looking at this process to basically answer all those questions, right? And kind of look at this in a holistic way. So the AT consideration is a process that uses data to make informed decisions.
Right.
So that's what I started to say before. Yes, it can be a yes, no to start, but it doesn't end there. So one group in assistive technology that's been around for a long time, potentially 30 years maybe, and this was kind of started by all these big pioneers in the assistive technology world. The acronym is QUIET. Quality Indicators for Assistive Technology.
And this is like a whole matrix, like thing we can
right. So the organization, like I said, it has been around probably more than 30 years, but I could be misquoting that, but for a long time. And what they have done is they have come up with these quality indicators, right? How are we providing high quality assistive technology services to students? This is not just New Jersey specific, of course, but really looking at this and pulling this all apart. So the first quality indicator is around assistive technology consideration and looking at it. So you mentioned the matrix, right? That's one of their tools. And of course, again, we'll link these into the show notes because I think these tools and having this on paper is really beneficial. So a matrix, of course, you're asking a question and then you're rating yourself, right? 1 to 5.
Yes.
Sort of like a rubric, of course, is another way to say that. And so in terms of, that first question, the quality indicator is assistive technology devices and services, so together, right, are considered for all students with disabilities, regardless of type or severity, right, of disability.
Right. And 1 being not unacceptable, 5 being we're doing it, promising practices.
Absolutely,
right?
Exactly. And again, they're not saying, we're saying promising, right? We want everybody to be moving, in that direction. And obviously it goes on from there in terms of the document. But what this matrix is providing is a way to go through this process, to ask these different questions around assistive technology consideration. And like I said, there's other standards as well that they have around evaluation and lots of other things too. But again, we're talking about considerations.
When you start that the AT consideration, that's where the evaluation then comes into play next.
Right, for sure.
So
potentially, right, to say we've considered all these various things. Maybe we've tried a couple of things, and now we're determining they need something more, again, to achieve FAPE in the least restrictive environment. The other way that I like to think about this is sort of like a flow chart. Right. So there's a bunch that exist. The Pacer Center has another, again, very straightforward one. You can obviously
we'll link this down.
I was going to say link this as well. But it's essentially a flow chart to ask those questions. Right. So the question is: the student making adequate progress on their annual goals in the general ed curriculum and participating in the least restricted environment?
Right.
Yes or no?
Right.
And then from there, so if it's yes, great. Is the student currently using AT? And then from here, yes or no, right?
Yeah.
If it's no, that original question, right? Are they making progress? No. Then next question, does the IEP team have enough information to determine an appropriate AT, right? Based on the student's needs?
Right.
Yes or no. And then it goes from there. So again, all of these documents are kind of getting the team to think about this consideration as a process, asking lots of different questions and looking at it from a lot of different angles.
Right.
So these are all things that I think are really important. The last piece is the data. So let's say that we go through all this information. You mentioned, of course, the evaluation. But at the end of this consideration process, it may be the student has appropriate supports.
Right.
Right? And maybe there's some tweaking, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's additional training, maybe, et cetera. Maybe there's more features that they need of the same thing we were talking about with read and write. So there can be variation, but the answer might be we have considered it and what they have is working and we're good.
Yeah.
but you need to then document that.
Right.
And Quiet is very, very big about all, that documentation, having that information and listing out the rationale. This is what we tried. This is what is working. This is what they have. Right? Whatever the situation is, to document it and to be very, very clear. And that way you have enough information. So when you look at it the next time, it's, this is what was happening. This is what we said at the time. And now, we're going to consider it again. And the answer at the second time may be, and this is still appropriate, right? Again, it depends.
And as the child grows with their IEP,
of course,
things change, right? Like, so when you have a kindergartner, an iPad might be good enough for that student, but then all of a sudden they're getting that 4th, 5th grade level. Now you need something a little more like a Windows laptop or a Chromebook or something like that with the built-in read and write. I know we keep going back to that, but like something like that, right? Like
whatever tool. And the thing too, and this brings us into the next point or the next kind of document that I wanted to talk about is in January of 2024, the Department of Ed put out a document around the myths and facts surrounding assistive technology, again, devices and services, the two things together. So this was at the federal level, and they went through lots of different myths and then talked about the facts regarding each one.
Cool.
And so
I'll ask you the myth and you can tell me the fact.
Sure.
Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
So assistive technology should only be considered at some IEP, individual education program team meetings.
Correct. So this is what you were saying before, right? So now we have a kindergartner and they're moving on to the next step. So the fact is that each time, right, the IEP team is developing or reviewing, revising the IEP, looking at the goals, that they should consider the AT every time.
Which in New Jersey is usually yearly, right? So we're usually looking at an IEP yearly, right?
Right. You're doing that annual review, right? Making sure everything, is good. So, right. So looking at it every time, I think that's an important piece. That sometimes is, again, people think that they don't have to, but it's just best practice to look at it every year and to go through this process.
Okay. Here's another myth. Providing an AT device to a child with a disability satisfies the IDEA's AT requirements.
Right. And the fact is that it has to be both the device and the service. And I know that I keep kind of slowing down when I say that, but it is so critical and obviously completely in alignment with our mission here at the AT Center at TCNJ, where we're providing the service, right, the professional development as a service. And it cannot be stated enough that the device is not enough. It is not the full picture. Even I would argue the assistive technology evaluation is not the full picture, because that's just pointing you toward the device. The service has to be the training, the follow-up, the ongoing checking in. Is this meeting the goal? Is it helping the student do what they're supposed to be doing? Is it helping them to achieve what we want them to achieve, what they want to achieve? And so it is both of the things. And that is a really important point that I think sometimes it gets glossed over a little bit, but the fact is that it really, the IDEA requirements are device and services.
Right. And we keep re-saying this. It's the feature matching, right? Like it's the device, what you said, and does it fulfill the needs?
Correct.
And,
right.
Cool. Here's the next myth. Specific AT decisions do not need to be included in the written IEP document.
Right. And really, the IDEA, it requires a statement, right? It's talking about the student, their related services, the supplemental aids, all the different things that are a part of it. So again, a more holistic kind of picture of what is going on.
Cool. Here's another myth. AT does not need to be considered as a part of the secondary transition process. We talk about that all the time.
Oh, yes.
Transitioning out of elementary school, transitioning out of high school to post-secondary, transitioning to adults.
Absolutely.
Being adult life, right?
We're talking transition at every phase of transition.
Yes.
Again, you and I have worked in the field enough to see,
yes.
And even, oh my goodness, again, we were at this conference and I had a conversation with someone who said, well, the student is turning 18 and, we really want to get them set up with some type of device. And I said, okay, well, tell me a little bit about what they're currently using. And the answer was nothing. And I thought, where have we been for 18 years? Unless, again, maybe this is a sudden onset potentially, right? So again, I don't know the student or the situation beyond this conversation in passing with someone, but I just thought we're talking transition at every transition. And we want to make sure that we've got that follow through and that we're looking at it because every situation, every environment is different.
Right.
So we really want to make sure that we're not just talking transition in terms of, 16 or 14 and up
Right.
At every stage.
Here's our last myth that we're going to go over. AT devices and services should only be considered for children with certain disabilities.
Right. And again, the first one that we talked a little bit about this in terms of the severity. And again, quiet, put that obviously as the first point in their matrix. We're talking about all students, all different types of students with disabilities who have all different types of needs. Yes, a student who maybe has multiple needs, so let's say they have a physical disability, they may additionally have a cognitive disability, maybe even a visual impairment. Again, you and I have worked with students who have a wide variety of needs. Yes, they can use assistive technology, but also a student who doesn't have that amount of needs also could benefit as well.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we go to the most extreme, but again, it's the same thing as the built-in features. It's the same thing as those disabilities that maybe visually someone can't see.
Right.
Doesn't mean that they can't benefit from some type of assistive technology.
Cool.
And I think just in terms of wrapping this and kind of talking about some of the maybe common pitfalls, and again, we're all trying to improve, right? When we know better, we do better, right? We're all trying to think about that. But that's the first one, really thinking about only considering it for the students with the greatest need, right? And obviously, we talked about that. Not having somebody on the IEP team or at least consult in, right, who's knowledgeable about assistive technology. So as we said, maybe the team is starting to talk and have that consideration piece and they realize maybe we need somebody else. Right, to kind of just help us even talk this through, right? Maybe, again, we're not to the evaluation point yet. Maybe we want to have just a conversation. So thinking about that, recognizing that maybe we don't have that capacity on the team. We want to get someone in maybe who can do that. Maybe the team doesn't use a consistent process based on data, right? And looking at the data to make decisions and that it is, factual. Obviously, we want to take the student, how do they feel? What do they like?
Yes.
We obviously want to include that, but it can't be the only thing.
And that's actually a question I'm at the end of evaluation. I know we're getting past, but I asked the student, what did you like today?
Of course.
We went through 30 different things. What did you, you like that? Oh, you like this? Oh, you liked using the computer. Oh, you liked using the iPad.
Right? Why do you
you
like
using the
this?
pencil because I got to draw, right? It's
Which is okay.
Yes,
it
is.
At the end of all of this, for sure.
Yeah, we need to know if the student is going to use, because
Are they buying in?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. One of the other things about consideration is that it's limited to only what the district knows or has. Again, a good place to start, not the end game, especially if it's not meeting the needs.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're not falling into that pitfall. That the team members, maybe they fail to consider access to the general curriculum, right? With the IEP goals, that it's all working together in terms of the student obviously receiving FAPE. So again, it's not this separate kind of silo, that it's all blending together. And that, as we said, that, if AT is not needed, which again, may be the case, that's documented.
Right.
So those are some of the areas that, are people maybe some teams run into some trouble. So trying to avoid those.
Cool. Thank you. That was a great deep dive into the AT consideration. And it really, really helped me open my mind just more about, even though I think about it all the time, it's just a yes and no checkbox on the IEP. But are we actually considering, with data, is the technology benefiting that student, or is there technology that could benefit that student? And are we going to bring in a professional, if we don't know, who can at least give us some advice, right?
Sure,
So you, Madison,
absolutely.
right?
Some guidance,
Show us how to use it.
Yeah,
right. Good. All right. So we've hit pretty much the end of our episode. We do have two more things. We're just going to talk about. Looking forward, I'm going to interview Madison. We're going to kind of find out a little more about her, and we'll talk about the SET framework during that one. We also have, we're going to talk about students with blind and low vision, and we have a TVI and an O&M instructor who will be on then. We also will be talking with a speech language pathologist and the transition process and all that kind of stuff. So we have some cool episodes coming up, and we're going to just keep working through. We also have that AT Summit, right? That's October 7th.
October 7th. Yep.
TCNJ, DRN, Disability Rights New Jersey, ATAC here.
Yep. It's going to be hosted here.
Hey there, listeners. This is Brian from the future here. We ran out of time while recording this episode, so we came back later to record the segment you're about to hear.
So we're in different outfits because we ran out of time, but we still wanted to play this game. So we're going to play this game. It's called AT Challenge Feature Match Mania. Actually, I did have a song for it. I'm going to have to play it.
Of course.
Let me play it.
Shine with flair. Show your skills, don't despair. Challenge. Feature match mania.
You like it? I love it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That is, yes. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a scenario describing a student's challenge in the educational setting. So, for example, a third grade student with dysgraphia struggles with handwriting and organizing thoughts for written assignments, or a high school student with a new visual impairment is having difficulty accessing digital books. And I would like you guys buzz in. You will give me one or two features to consider. Okay, for whatever the AT tool we're considering for them going forward. So I'll give you an example. So, kindergarten student on the autism spectrum struggles with transition between activities and understanding daily schedules, leading to meltdowns and anxiety. So what are
I could take that one.
Yeah.
So thinking about different key features. So he's having difficulty with transition, daily schedules, kind of time management, kind of just moving through the day. So maybe some type of visual schedule or alternative type of schedule, maybe a timer or timekeeper, and maybe something where he can make some choices, right?
Yes.
In these environments, he may have to move to the next place, but maybe he can walk there or walk backwards there, or do something else to give him a little ownership.
Cool. Good. All right. That's good. That was it. So here's our first question. A second grade student with severe speech sound disorder is largely unintelligible and relies on gestures to communicate with their needs and wants in the classroom. What are two key features to consider? Or what are some key features to consider?
Yeah, so I would definitely look at some type of AAC with voice output. So, whether that be a mid-tech or a high-tech system that has like a robust vocabulary. I feel like that would be the main solution there.
Good.
And also like when you're looking at this, honoring the whole realm of the student's communication, their gestures, and I'm sure they're probably receiving speech services and working on their speech sounds as well. So, looking at communication as a whole, but also providing them with that voice output AAC system so that they can communicate functionally in different environments.
Perfect. I like it. All right. Scenario number 2. A fourth grade student with ADHD consistently loses assignments, forgets to turn in homework, and struggles to manage their locker and backpack. Vanessa.
So someone who could benefit from all kinds of different organization, right? We're thinking probably digital, just because they won't get lost potentially, right? Especially obviously on their phone. But definitely setting up reminders, alerts, like something that is going to give them the information to remind them about, what's going on might be helpful. And then maybe kind of breaking something down, right? And saying, you have a 2-page paper to write or some other, lengthy assignment, kind of breaking it into chunks might be helpful as well. So some tech that can help them do that.
Perfect. All right, scenario number. That's point. We got one, right?
All right.
Point.
I don't get a half point for the example one.
Oh man! All right, I'll give I'll give you a quarter point.
How thinly can we?
Maybe you'll get a negative point next time. No. Start below 0.
Go on.
Scenario number 3. A high school student with a diagnosis of progressive visual impairment is struggling to read standard print textbooks, and glare from whiteboards is causing discomfort.
Well, I'm going to take a stab, but I saw Maddie. I mean, there's in terms of visual impairment, it's such a spectrum, right? It's so broad. And so of course we want to look at a variety of different things. Initially people might say magnification, but sometimes that makes it worse, right? Like if it's too large, it's too pixelated, it's, just depending obviously again, but maybe, something there and, obviously having that auditory feedback, for them too. But, Maddie, I saw you also, so I wanted to give you an opportunity to say something if you wanted to.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines, like a combination of, tools and again, with any of these scenarios, this is a very brief little snippet of the student's needs and really looking at that student as a whole in a real life scenario. And, seeing what they've trialed in the past too, getting that information.
Definitely.
And looking at what didn't work for them and helping that inform your decision on what might work in the future.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I guess I give a half point both of you guys.
All right, let's
So
do it.
what is it? Is it 1.5 to 1 3/4?
Platform 9 3/4.
Number 4, scenario 4. A middle school student with cerebral palsy has difficulty navigating a standard keyboard and mouse to complete computer-based tasks, limiting their access to online assignments and research.
That's a good one. Okay. So I would definitely look at some adaptive mice that might help the student to access, the computer to be able to complete the assignments and do some research. I would also look into some accessibility settings built into the student's device, whether they're using an iOS-based system, whether they're using a Chromebook, something that allows for voice control or some other kind of, even a gesture control, depending on that situation.
Cool, good. So what is that? And that makes it 1.5 to 2.5 to 1 3/4.
Right.
So this is for everything. So if you get it, Maddie wins. If you get it, Vanessa, you win.
All right.
All right. Scenario number 5. A high school student with a mild intellectual disability struggles with independent reading comprehension, particularly with complex vocabulary and abstract concepts in textbooks. Ooh, Vanessa.
So this is one of my, I don't want to say kind of favorite topics, but the distraction lists, right? Limiting. So it's distraction and then it's kind of thinking about the content, maybe simplifying the content, and we talked a little bit about, AI and in terms of taking a text and putting it in different reading levels, right? Giving students opportunities, for that, because obviously we want them to be as independent as possible. And also giving them, support with the vocabulary, making sure that they comprehend, right? It's not just simplifying the text, but do you get the same meaning, right? Like you can't simplify it too much because then you're losing, that. So some of those opportunities, and of course the text to speech, if auditory, getting information auditorily is helpful to the student that might kind of bridge the gap into that comprehension.
Perfect. So I think we get a round of applause. Vanessa.
All right.
So Vanessa, 2 3/4 to 2.5. I don't even know. Did I do my math right?
Probably.
We'll hope.
Trust you.
And that's a wrap on another episode of AT Talks. A huge thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. We love making this podcast and building this community with all of you. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. The team at the Assistive Technology Center at TCNJ is dedicated to supporting educators across New Jersey. If you were inspired by today's discussion and want to bring high-quality, free professional development to your district, Vanessa and Madison are ready to help. To learn how you can partner with the center and build capacity in your school, head over to our website. You can find all the information you need at atcenter.tcnj.edu. And while you're there, we want to hear from you. Visit the podcast tab. There you can send us a question through our Google form, or even better, leave us a voice message on SpeakPipe for us to play live on the show. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay up to date on all our latest events and resources. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube with the handle @ATCenterTCNJ. And don't forget to subscribe to AT Talks on whatever platform you're listening on right now so you never miss an episode. On behalf of Vanessa, Madison, and myself, Brian, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.